Welcome. Marcus brings us a tale with a bit of a twist. I am sure it will be well worth your while. If you haven't, please like, share, and subscribe.
My name is Marcus, and I am 24 years old. I would consider myself an average-looking guy, but I have been told on occasion that I am handsome. I live what I would consider to be a boring life. Like most people, I go to work, come home from work, eat, shower, sleep, and then do it all over again the next day. The only days that see a change in this routine are my off days. On these days, I typically can be found at the movies or on the road traveling to find interesting places to fly my drone. Going out flying my drone made me realize I was in the worst shape ever. There would be times I would go walking through the woods or some remote area, and after about quarter of a mile I would be tired as hell. Beads of sweat would be rolling down my face as my legs begged me to turn around and head back to my car. So I decided that I would need to get into better shape in order to enjoy this new hobby of mine. I eagerly enrolled into a local gym and set about my new goal. It was difficult at first, but after doing a bit of research and talking to a few of the guys at the gym, I was well on my way. Getting all buff wasn't my goal. I just wanted to slim down and be able to walk through the woods without passing out from fatigue. I also decided to get familiar with the things of nature since I would be trekking through it on a regular basis. So I learned some basic survival skills and what to do when confronted by certain animals. The more I learned, the more I came to realize how lucky I had been on a lot of my previous treks through the woods. Sheesh. I was pretty much playing Russian roulette with my life. Flying my drone here in Florida, there is only so much you can see. From beaches, buildings, ships, and landmarks. After some time, you want to see something new, something different. So I decided I would take a trip up to Georgia, seeing as it was one of the states closest to me. After doing a bit of research, I decided to check out Stone Mountain Park in Atlanta. It had plenty of the scenery I was looking for, and I couldn't wait to see the Atlanta skyline through the lens of my drone. I was sure it would be well worth the trip. With that being said, I had no idea on the direction my life would take. I embarked on my trip just as I had planned over the weekend. I would leave on Friday morning and arrive by that afternoon around 3 p.m. if traffic didn't hold me up. Man, that was one long drive. It was a bit more than I had bargained for, but with the aid of music and snacks I was able to endure. Anyway, upon my arrival, I checked into the hotel I booked. I asked the front desk clerk about nearby places to eat. She was eager to suggest a few places as she checked me in. After going up to my room and settling in a bit, I set out to satiate my appetite. The restaurant the front desk clerk suggested wasn't too far away. I went in and kept it simple. I ordered some wings with fries and a drink to go. I got it to go because I knew that after that long drive and filling my belly, I would be out like a light. And that is exactly what happened once I got back to my hotel room. The next morning I woke up at around 6 a.m., washed up, and went down to the hotel lobby where they were having a complimentary breakfast. It wasn't anything all that special, but it was better than nothing at all. After eating, I headed back up to my room to gather up my gear before setting out. The place I was planning to go wasn't that far away. It would only take me about an hour or so to get there. As I got into my car and took a deep breath, I was filled with excitement for what lay ahead. There was a freshness in the air that was somehow different than back home. It was only a month before fall, but there was a cool breeze in the air, and only a few leaves had begun to change color. This was all new to me being from South Florida. I wasn't accustomed to seeing the changing of the seasons. Where I was from, the only seasons we had were summer, hurricane, and winter. Anything 70 degrees and below was considered cold. I pulled into one of the parking areas at the park at around 8:45 a.m. I wasn't planning to be there for too long. In all, I guessed it would take about 3 hours. I would hike out and find some good scenery, fly my drone, and take some awesome photos. With my gear packed away in my backpack and my provisions in hand, I set off on the longest trail the park had to offer. I laughed when I read that it was called the Cherokee Trail. For me, it just rang of irony, being the longest trail and the Trail of Tears. Well, those of you in the know will surely get the gist of what I am talking about. Anyway, As I set off, I was surprised to not see that many people were out and about on such a beautiful day. There was a slight breeze in the air that kept things nice and cool. The trees swayed back and forth as the breeze would come and go as I walked along the trail. About halfway through walking on the trail, I decided to stray a bit off the beaten path. Oh, I forgot to mention that, as I pulled into the park, I discovered that flying my drone was not allowed inside the park. Hence why I went off the trail to gain a bit of privacy. After walking for about 30 minutes, I came upon a little opening in the tree line which allowed me to see the shimmer of water from the lake that was in the park. It was such a mesmerizing sight as I looked out over the water. I instantly thought this would be a good starting shot for my drone. I set about checking the area for any obstacles that impede the flight of the drone. Once I was able to see that all was clear, I set about preparing my drone for flight. Having done it so many times before, it didn't take me long to get my drone ready for flight. The shot I wanted to get is the drone flying through the trees at the height of a person and then out over the water. I did the shot a few times and then just flew my drone all over the lake area, taking as many pics as I could. I had 4 battery packs, which gave me about 24 minutes each of flight time. It was on my second battery when I heard a tree branch snap to my right. I quickly snapped my head in the direction of the sound, not knowing what to expect, but there, standing about 25 feet away from me, was a female. I had no clue of how long she had been standing there. I was so singularly focused on flying my drone that I hadn't even noticed her walking up. She looked to be in her mid-20s and Native American. "Hi!" I shouted nervously as I stared at her. She didn't reply back. She just stared back at me for a few seconds before taking a few steps towards me. She seemed to be talking as she walked towards me, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. I initially thought to myself, should I step back from her or stand my ground as she approached? Before I could make the decision,
Flying a drone here is prohibited, right?
I was immediately smitten by her. At a distance, I couldn't tell how she looked, but now that she was closer, I could easily see that she was beautiful. Then add her voice to the mix, and I was totally mesmerized. I guess she noticed the look of bewilderment on my face.
Don't worry, I ain't gonna tell nobody.
"Yeah, thanks. I know it isn't allowed, but I figured I could sneak and do it anyways," I replied as I stared at her.
So, you come out here often?
"No, I just made the trip up here from South Florida."
I am visiting from a lot further than that. I'm from Alaska.
Now she was standing right next to me, looking at the controller in my hand. I could tell she was interested. "Would you like to see?" I asked. She just nodded her head yes in response. The rest of my time there I spent showing her how the drone works, letting her fly it, and showing her some of the pictures I had taken since having the drone. Long after the batteries on my drone had been depleted, we spent our time walking, talking, and enjoying the scenery. She told me her name was Taya Amarok of the Yupik tribe, and that it was her first time visiting Stone Mountain Park. She also was from Alaska, but would soon be moving to Tacoma, Washington. When we finally left the park, the sun had begun to set. We exchanged numbers and went our separate ways. The following months were filled with calls, texts, and exchanging pics of ourselves and our daily lives. We talked until spring the following year. By this time, I was already deeply into her, and I only hoped she felt the same. This was my first long-distance thing, so I didn't want to do or say anything to mess up the vibe. In other words, I was terrified of asking her if we could be a couple officially. So I was okay with the unofficially version of us, even if it was only in my own eyes. One night while we were on a video call, she got to talking about how things were in Tacoma for a few months, and she wasn't doing all too well with the move. As she spoke, I could see this sadness on her face. She asked if I would come to see her. Stunned but eager to see her, I answered with a hearty yes, before the sentence was from her lips to my ears. For the rest of our talk that night, a big smile was etched upon my face. We both decided that I would come to visit when it got a bit warmer, so we set our sights on the month of July. That was only 2 months out, so I would have to get to planning, and I did just that. I was able to get things pieced together without too many issues. Flight, hotel, and car rental, which my older sister helped me with, were all lined up. By the time I got everything ready, It was only a week and a half before my flight. I arrived in Tacoma, Washington on July 10th, and I would be staying for 1 week. The moment of truth was finally upon me. I would finally be seeing Taya again after 10 long months. Once off my flight, I gathered my bags, and to my surprise, there waiting for me at the baggage claim area was Taya, but standing one each side of her stood 2 tall men. I was a bit taken aback, because Taya didn't mention anything to me about bringing someone along. As I got closer, the group Taya approached and gave me a hug. One of the guys standing at her side took my suitcase and the other extended his hand and stated,
"I'm sorry for the intrusion, but we had to meet the man our little sister has been talking so much about. We hope you don't mind."
I said no and shook his hand. They turned and began walking. Taya and I followed behind. As we walked, we looked at each other and smiled. It was dark outside as we all got into the truck. There was a nice crisp chill in the air. As we drove, not much was being said, until one of the 2 men broke the silence.
"My name is Kevin, and this is Sean. I am the eldest, but only by 4 years. So have you ever been to Washington?"
No, this will be my first time, but I am looking forward to getting a chance to fly my drone. The rest of the trip to the hotel was spent bantering about places I could fly my drone and passing my phone around so they could see the pics I had taken. Once they dropped me off at the hotel. Taya walked inside with me as I checked in. After all was done, we stood facing each other.
Thank you for coming. Nara, Naklin Gore.
She whispered into my ear as she pulled me in close.
That means sleep well in my language. I will come for you tomorrow morning. Be ready.
She smiled as she turned and headed out the sliding doors into the night, and I headed up to my room to get some much-needed sleep. The next morning came and I got my things together. Taya had already texted me that she would be arriving around 11 a.m. and it was now 10:47 a.m. The next few days, this was about how things went. It was good to see her again, and just enjoy being away from work, not to mention the hassles of everyday life. After the 4th day of us just going here and there. I mean, we went to the malls, movies, out to eat, and just had a wonderful time exploring the city. She admitted that she didn't want to leave Alaska, so she hadn't even bothered to do any exploring. So it all was a first for both of us. It just made the time together all the more special. Taya said that her family wanted to meet him before he left. She asked if I would be okay with it. I assured her that I didn't mind, and it wasn't all that big of a deal. She let me know that she would pick me up tomorrow afternoon around 4:30 p.m. I would have to be alone during the day, because it is customary for her to assist in preparing the food since I was her guest. I totally understood. After spending the day just lazing about, I got dressed and waited for Taya to arrive. As usual, she arrived on time. The ride to where she lived was a bit a ways from the hotel. I'd guess we drove for about an hour. Once arriving at the house, I was greeted by her family. There was her mother, whose name was Vanessa. Her grandmother's name was Ilukta, and of course her 2 brothers Kevin and Sean. We all sat down to eat. The family asked many questions about me and my life, as well as how me and Taya met. In all, it all went well. After we were done eating and talking, it was about 8 p.m. Taya's 2 brothers called my name and beckoned me to come with them. I followed, and soon we were in their truck heading out into the woods. I began to wonder what was going on, but I just eased my nerves by saying to myself that they were just brothers doing what brothers do. After about a mile or 2, we came to a stop. The 2 men jumped out of the truck and motioned for me to follow them. I remember Sean jokingly saying, "Come on, we ain't gonna kill ya," laughing as he walked on ahead. We walked until we came upon a clearing where a campfire was already lit. There, standing next to the campfire, was Taya and Vanessa. Vanessa was the first to speak.
"Marcus, I am sure you are wondering what this is all about. You see, my daughter has taken a liking to you, but she was afraid to reveal the truth of what we are to you, because she feared you would want nothing to do with her."
She paused for a moment as she looked intensely into my eyes. I turned to look at Taya, but she only stared at the ground.
"It pains me, but before we can go any further, you must be told the truth."
She then turned to Taya.
"Tell him. It must be from your lips to his ears."
Taya slowly lifted her head and walked over to me. She looked long and deep into my eyes before the words that would change my life left her lips.
I am a werewolf.
She said, taking my face into her hands. I was shocked. I was trying to speak, but the words were stuck in my throat. I just stood there for what seemed like an eternity. No, stop playing! You can't be serious right now! I shouted. What I would hear next would shake me to my core.
It's true, Marcus. It runs in our family. And the only way for us to be together is that I have to turn you. It is our way.
No fucking way. I ain't becoming no damn werewolf. Why the hell did I say that out loud? Because that's when the shit hit the fan.
Either you become one of us or you don't make it out of these woods.
No, that's not what we agreed upon.
It has always been this way. We can't trust he won't tell anyone about us.
He won't. Just let him go. I love him.
With those words, there was an immediate silence. You could feel the tension in the air. Vanessa and Sean grabbed Taya as she screamed for them to leave me alone. I wanted to run, but I was stuck in place trying to process just what the fuck was going on.
Marcus, I will honor you in light of your position. You know me as Kevin, but my tribal name is Amaruk. My brother's name is Nanook. Will you become one of us?
I need time. I can't make this decision that quickly.
Then may the spirits be with you. Tonight the hunt begins.
I heard the crackling of bones as his voice began to get deeper and his face changed.
Nekamek Mernilruk, Kurlutin, Nanvaman Ilagin, Tayamun Piskelutin.
I have no idea what he said, but I was sure that it was not good. There was no time to gather my thoughts. I just turned and ran into the darkness of night. Thankfully, there was a full moon because if not, I would be totally in the dark. I was also thankful for all the working out I had done, because I knew that I could run about 2 miles in 18 minutes. With any luck, I would have at least that much time before they came after me. I needed to get some distance between myself and them. I also needed to find a weapon of some sort. As I ran along through the night air, I found a long branch and sharpened it into a spear as I ran along at a slight jog. I also was able to make 2 shorter sharpened pieces of limbs about 6 inches long. As I tucked the 2 small stakes in between my waistband and belt, I noticed that it was abnormally quiet. I could only hear the wind blowing through the tree branches from time to time. Then it came bellowing through the night. It was a howl that chilled me to the bone. It was far off, but it sounded like it was all around me. It was time I got back to putting some distance between myself and that howl. The more I thought about my predicament, the more I realized I didn't stand a chance of surviving. All I could hope was to make my last moments amongst the living matter. There was another howl as I made my way through the night. This time it was closer than the last. As I moved through the trees, jumping over fallen branches, rocks, and the like, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Its steady beat climbing up into my throat. I raced ahead, clutching my makeshift spear in my hand as I leaped and bounded through the forest. The forest was alive with the sounds of the hunt now. The sounds of heavy footsteps, branches snapping, leaves crunching, and the low grunting of a beast in pursuit of its prey. As I looked back, I glimpsed its yellow eyes set ablaze by the moonlight darting back and forth through the trees as it gained on me. There was nothing more I could do. I was at my limit. My lungs burned with every breath. My body trembled as the adrenaline pumped through my veins. There was no point in running anymore, so I stopped and turned to face the beast that was coming for me. I gripped the spear in my hands so tightly, the bark seemed to burn into my skin. Beads of sweat rolled down the sides of my face as I breathed deeply. Closer and closer it came bounding through the trees, its eyes set upon me. Its snarls and grunts echoed in my ears as it approached. Until finally the beast came bursting through the trees. There about 8 feet in front of me the animal stood, its black shiny fur shining in the moonlight. It stood at about 7 feet tall, and I could see the muscles in its body as it swayed from side to side. Its long arms hung at its sides, bearing its razor-sharp claws. The werewolf threw its head back and let out a deafening howl. As if I wasn't scared shitless already just looking at this monstrous thing standing before me. The next thing I know, it came at me. He was fast. In retrospect, why did it take so long to catch up to me, if he was this fast? He had to be toying with me, maybe even watching me as I ran for my damn life. I was barely able to dodge out of the way. It made little difference because I could feel a burning sensation in my arm and felt that wet, warm flow of blood running down my left arm. It all happened so fast I didn't even feel it happened. I thrust the sharpened branch at him, managing to hit nothing but air. The beast quickly launched at me, slamming into my body, knocking me to the ground in a heap, sending dirt and leaves flying into the air. The impact sent the spear flying from my hands. As I lay on the ground, catching my breath, my eyes darted about trying to see where the spear had fallen. There, a few feet away. I turned and frantically reached out for it. That's when I felt a searing pain on my back. The beast had slashed clean through my clothing. The next thing I know, I am flying through the air, my back slamming into a tree. I almost blacked out on impact, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins kept me in the fight. I stumbled to my feet, whipping the sweat from my eyes, but I soon realized it wasn't sweat, but blood. The werewolf didn't relent. It dashed back towards me, pinning me up against the tree, its face only inches from mine. I fought and pushed back against the beast as it snarled and growled, showing its mouth full of sharp teeth. As I struggled, I remembered the two shorter, sharpened branches I had on each side. I quickly grabbed the one on my right side and managed to jam it into the leg of the werewolf. It let out a ferocious howl filled with rage and tossed me to the side. The motion caused me to lose my grip on the branch. He didn't even bother to pull it out. He just swiped at it, knocking it out of its thigh, causing blood to spurt out onto the ground. I snatched the other sharpened branch from my waistband and braced myself for the creature's next attack. Filled with rage, he just came charging straight at me like a freight train. There wasn't much that I could do but brace for impact. He slammed into me like a linebacker sacking a quarterback. I could feel all the air leave my body as I lay on the ground. I was fading between being conscious and unconscious. There was a sharp pain in my side whenever I took a breath. The beast loomed over me, growling. Then another howl rang out in the forest. Damn, now I am going to get torn to shreds by two werewolves. I braced myself as the beast leaned in closer as if savoring its kill. Suddenly there was a ferocious growl as the other came crashing through the trees, slamming into the werewolf that was on top of me, sending them both crashing to the ground and tumbling a few feet away. The two fought as their growls, fur, and blood filled the air. The other werewolf was a bit slender, shorter, and had brownish-black fur. As they fought, the black werewolf was obviously stronger, but the other werewolf was faster and cunning. I pulled myself up against a tree that was nearby. I could only watch as they fought. They moved so fast that I could barely follow the action, but it seemed the bigger werewolf was getting the upper hand. That was until the smaller one threw dirt into the eyes of the bigger werewolf, disorienting him. The next thing I hear is what sounds like a home run. The brown werewolf had picked up a large branch and whacked it across the head of the black werewolf, sending splinters flying through the air. The black werewolf crashed to the ground, causing the ground to vibrate under its weight. It just lay there in a heap, not moving. I sat and watched then. After a few moments, it slowly turned into Kevin. The brown werewolf walked towards me, changing as it approached until I could plainly see who it was. "Taya," I whispered as I passed out. It was over. I had survived, but that was the last time I saw her. That night I broke 3 ribs, got a concussion, various lacerations, a gash on my head that needed stitches, but nothing hurt more than not seeing her again. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right decision. It's not every day you can meet someone you can call your soulmate, but is it worth my humanity? She has called and texted, but I have yet to answer or reply. I don't know what to say. It has been 6 months since her last text. I think just getting this all out has given me some clarity. That night she raised her claws to her kin. Something I will never forget. She risked everything for me. What I was didn't matter to her. She fought for me. For us. If this is the only way for us to be together, for me to be with her, then I welcome the beast.
Marcus has made his decision. For some, there is no greater thing than finding love. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And should you find yourself lost during your travels, let the light be your guide.